You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, biohacking, and functional medicine. Stay up to date and listen anywhere and anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your host, Dr. Justin Marchegiani, as he answers your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani, and welcome to another awesome episode of Beyond Wellness Radio. We now have full podcast transcriptions over at justinhealth.com. Head over to justinhealth.com, click on the podcast button, and you'll be able to access all shows forward and past. And while you're there, feel free and sign up for the thyroid and hormone video series. Some great information there for everyone. And while you're there, you can also sign up for the podcast newsletter, where you'll get access to these podcasts right in your inbox before anyone else. While you're there, you can also schedule a consult with myself if you want to dive into any other functional medicine or health issues. Again, stay tuned for the show. And if you're enjoying it, please feel free and share it. Sharing is caring. Think of one person that could benefit from this show and share it. And also, feel free and head over to beyondwellnessradio.com/iTunes and send us a review. We really appreciate it. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani here with Beyond Wellness Radio. And today we have my Italian friend, Jamie Caporosso. How are we doing, Jamie?
Good, sir. How are you doing today?
Very good. And just for all the listeners, Jamie owns a CrossFit gym over in Howell, Michigan. And he does a lot with powerlifting, performance enhancement. He does a lot with the ketogenic, kind of lower carb paleo. And Jamie's going to kind of tell us a little bit about his story and what he does with him and his clients at his gym to help improve performance, lose weight, and just overall kick more butt.
Right. Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's great for you to be here, Jamie. So we're curious about your story. Can you tell us a little bit more about you and your background and how you came into this path?
Yeah, no problem. Just for everyone out there listening, my background is not that health nut guy. I came from the the epitome of powerlifting, where it was eat big, lift big. So it was eat everything everything you see in sight. Just try to get bigger, thinking that depending on those leverages help for your squat, bench, and your deadlift. It wasn't till later that I started looking at things a little closer. I was getting a little older. I had a couple kids. Started looking at my mortality a little bit closer, and started thinking, well, that maybe being this big isn't a good idea. Now, granted, I wasn't huge by any means. I'm a all natural, drug-free power lifter, but I did eat everything in sight. So during a quick physical with my doctor one day, he said, Jamie, there's a direct correlation between belly fat and heart disease. And I'm like, well, who's he talking to? He knows me. I work out,
Right.
I think a lot of people have that mentality, is that, and maybe even more so guys, that they think they're in better shape than they really are. So I started looking at that a little closer and said, you know what? Well, I'm gonna lose some weight. I'm gonna lose some of this fat and lean out a little bit. So I went. Seemed like the obvious route to me in the beginning, as I went to look at what bodybuilders did. I said, well, they lose fat professionally. That sounds like a good place to start. So I started going down that path, and some of the stuff didn't really make sense to me, and I was hungry all the time and whatnot. And I started talking with some friends, and they said, it sounds like what you're really looking for more is like an optimal health diet. You want to be healthy above anything. I'm saying, well, that's true. That's kind of what I was looking for, and that kind of pulled me over into the paleo world, or sometimes I like to call the natural human diet world.
Right.
Where you take a look at, what did we eat the first 2 million years in a nutshell. And like I said, remember, I was not that guy. And a little bit more of my background is I do have a degree in clinical laboratory science and biology from the University of Michigan. So as I was doing my research, I would always start backing it up against the biology, and then pulling out some of my old college textbooks and stuff like that, and things started adding up.
Right.
And I didn't like that, to be honest with you, because I was very anti healthy eating. I didn't want to give up fast food alley.
Right.
I didn't want to give, I didn't want to give up, all my pizza and like I said, big plates of pasta with that Italian background is a hard pill to swallow.
Of course.
So going down that, learning more and more about the paleo or natural human diet, I decided to give it a try, and jumped into it, and just within a few days, already noticed just by cutting the grains, the distension of my gut was gone.
Huge.
That made a huge difference to me, and I was like, wow, look at that. And then after just a few short weeks, some of the inflammatory things that were starting to come around for me, and I was about 36 at the time, some arthritis in my hands, and I was a nap-taking fool at that point, probably from the huge, sugar rushes and insulin, dumps. That started subsiding, started feeling better, and I had also had asthma since I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. And one day on my treadmill in the morning, I noticed that I hadn't had an asthma attack in a long time, and I decided to give myself one, or try to. So I just ramped that thing up and stood on it ran on it as fast and as long as I could. And remind you, power lifter, so running was really my thing. And I couldn't get that asthma attack, that tight lung feeling anymore. And that was pretty much the day I decided I was hooked.
Wow.
Not to mention that I had blood work done at the time too, and my doctor literally said to me, he says, I don't know what you're doing, but I've never seen blood work turn around this fast, even with medication.
And I know you're one of these guys where you're actually very sensitive to dairy. I think you even mentioned that you're sensitive to even grass-fed butter. You kind of get that little bit of bloat. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I start learning more. I stumbled across Finney's books.
Yeah.
I started looking for that performance edge, right? Because now
I just want to reiterate for all the listeners, that's Dr. Stephen Finney. He's written some books on kind of the low carbohydrate diet action. I think he's over at the University of Vermont Medical School too.
Yeah, I think that's where he is. Yeah, Stephen Finney and Dr. Volek, Peter Volek. Great book. So I stumbled across these things in an effort for a little advantage. Being, getting in my 40s, being a drug-free lifter, starting to look for every advantage I could get. And I decided to try it for a 12-week cycle, because in the book he says you need 4 to 6 weeks to get adapted, and then I figured, well, then I got 6 weeks of training with it.
Right.
We got invited to compete at WPC Worlds that year. It happened to be in Vegas. So me and my partner decided to go on this ketogenic pathway while not giving up what we learned about paleo. Being some of the dairy things and some of the other like legume things and stuff like that, with the anti-nutrients. So we went down this pathway, and we both had the best meets of our career at Worlds that year.
Wow.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. I'm not a new lifter. I'm not a guy who was in a honeymoon period getting stronger. I'm a guy who's been fighting and scratching and clawing for 5 pounds on my total for a while now. And the only real thing that I changed was that, this diet. It's not like I changed my training paradigm at all. It's this diet that I completely, morphed over from the keto paleo thing. My recovery was insane. My energy levels were insane comparatively. I couldn't say enough good things about it, to be honest with you.
So the big thing for you is you're keeping your carbs down really low. How many carbs do you think you were having per day, you think?
In the beginning, I was sticking with their 5 to 50, but near the end, I really think it was around 10 to 15 a day, and that was all via green vegetables.
Got it. And then what were your lifts like? Because I do see some CrossFit people that come in my clinic that do go really, really low carb, and actually adding some carbs in actually improves or helps them. They just feel better, less hair loss, better temperature, better mood, better energy. So when you're doing a lot of powerlifting stuff, are you doing like any WODs where you're doing like Metcon stuff or really long movements, or are you doing more like 2 to 3 to 4 or 5 reps? What's your workout like?
Well, at the time, I was doing both.
Wow.
I was CrossFitting 2 or 3 days a week, and I felt that was keeping me in better shape.
Yeah.
Then I was doing my 4 days of heavy lifts with the powerlifting. I'd have a deadlift day, a squat day, and then two really heavy bench days in there. But I was doing the CrossFit with it, and actually, in all our infinite wisdom, we decided to run a 5K too. Remind you, not runners.
Yeah, I remember you told me this. Yeah.
Yeah, this was the most interesting thing. I ran a 5K on a Sunday in Bay City, and it was absolutely freezing. It was St. Patty's Day. Sometimes we get lucky. St. Patty's Day is nice. Sometimes we get the shaft.
Right.
In Michigan here. So, and it was one of the cold days, and I PR'd on my time running it. I'd only run it once or twice before.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 days later, I had a deadlift workout where I PR'd. It was more of a volume day. I had previously maybe pulled 405 for 5, maybe 6 reps. And that day, just out of nowhere, I pulled 405 for 10. Again, not huge numbers, but, I'm a drug-free powerlifter, 220 weight class. And but I would have thought I still would have been smashed from that running that 5K.
Wow. So why do you think some people, because I have my theories, why do you think some people, for like the type of movements that you're doing with the CrossFit and then combining it with the power training, why do you think some people do a little bit better with, some more carbs? And I mean carbs 50 to 100, maybe a little over 100. And why do you think you're doing better with that super, super low keto paleo diet with what you're doing?
I have a couple theories on that, and I don't have any case studies to back anything up yet. One, I do think there is a difference between incorporating dairy with keto as opposed to not. I think some people are uber sensitive to dairy and maybe causes some inflammatory responses that they may or may not be noticing. This last time around, I'm very lean in this while I'm doing this right now, and I noticed that if I have a non-paleo cheat, like I have a bunch of heavy whipping cream and some cheeses and stuff, I will get a layer over the top of me, like a bloat.
You mentioned that.
Yeah, that I noticed because, and I don't think anybody else would notice that if it wasn't for the fact that I was so lean right now. The other thing I noticed is that in my Metcon training, I'm winded quicker. It's also almost like my asthma comes back a little bit creeping in. Now that's just a theory. And another thing that I think a lot of people forget to before a heavy workout up their sodium, like a cup of broth or something like that.
Yeah, the electrolytes, the minerals and such.
Yeah, and then the drop of blood pressure where they're used to having a little extra pressure there for not having the sodium. I think that's a big one because if I have a heavy training day and I forget my cup of broth, it's like I got nothing to push against.
Yeah, and I really appreciate what you're doing because like in the low carb world, there's like you can be low carb and then you can be low carb paleo, and paleo really is, just for all the listeners at home, it's just adding a filter over. Kind of like taking, you have regular glasses and then you put the little sunglasses on top of it that flip down like you did in the 80s. And that flip for paleo really is, it's making sure the macronutrients have quality to them, ideally organic. If we're eating meat like beef, it's grass-fed. If we're eating eggs, it's pasture-fed. We're avoiding the artificial sweeteners. If you're doing butter, it's grass-fed butter. Most people consider paleo no dairy at all, so then that's kind of your side of it too.
Yeah.
And then, no soy protein. So some people in the low-carb world, they'll do some soy protein. They'll do some aspartame. They may even do some sugar-free desserts and stuff with the Splenda in there and such. But you're really adding the element of quality. Your macronutrients are high quality, no chemicals, organic. Is that correct, Jamie?
Yeah, as much as possible. Where we live, I live kind of a rural area, right in between Detroit and Lansing. I can get my grass-fed beef from a friend of mine's dad who raises, cows. There's a farm up the road where we can get our eggs. Like I get duck eggs and chicken eggs, and that's another thing I noticed, big time differences. Cheap source of protein is traditionally eggs, right? So I use a ton of eggs, like just standard grocery store eggs. And then it wasn't until I started buying them off the farm up the road where, I mean, the chickens are literally, like you said, out in pasture. You see where they're coming from.
Oh, yeah.
And that over a couple weeks, I noticed a huge difference in just my overall well-being.
So just for the listeners at home, Jamie, the quality of the macronutrients, not just being low carb, but the quality of those macronutrients is incredibly important.
Yeah, it can be. It can be. I mean, I call that my the 50 Shades of Paleo. How far do you want to take this? In the beginning, I was pretty successful just with standard grocery store stuff. It wasn't until I kept looking for that little extra every time I turned the corner.
Well, it makes sense, too, because you get guys like Joel Salatin who own Polyface Farms. He was in the documentary Food Inc.
Yeah.
He's been on record saying that his pasture-fed eggs have 20 times more folate than the regular store eggs. So we know, man, you pay double the price, but you get 20 times more. That's pretty impressive for a food product.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, some people say this stuff's expensive, and then you see them with a $5 Starbucks in their hand, and you're like, well, I think it just all depends on your priorities, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really depends on your priorities. I mean, people have a $130 phone bill. They spend $5 at Starbucks a day. And I always tell my patients it's really about getting your priorities in alignment. And if you eat healthy, eggs, a good maybe, dozen eggs may cost $4 or $5. But I mean, the average person, it's 3 eggs per meal. That's like $1 per meal, $1.50 a meal. I mean, where can you go out and get $1.50 for a really high quality meal? You can't.
Yeah, you can't. It's funny that I think Jimmy has that one of his podcasts. He said, so if you bought a dozen of these $4 eggs, and you had 3 for breakfast, 3 for lunch, and 3 for dinner, how could you possibly eat that cheap?
Yeah, how could you possibly with the quality? I mean, even if you went, like the only way you could eat that cheap is if you went to like the dollar menu, like Wendy's or like McDonald's. That's it. That's the only way you could do it. But that's just the worst quality stuff you could ever put in your body.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, can you walk the listeners through kind of what's it like a day in your life? You get up, what do you eat? When do you eat? What's your day like?
Yeah, I get up, if I'm coaching in the morning, I'll get up around 4:55, so an early start on that day.
Man.
Yeah, well, my first class is at 5:30.
I know, I'm on your site. I saw that. I was like, yeesh, cringing at that time.
Yeah. My first class is at 5:30, so I'll get up and I'll do that. I'll make 2 or 3 eggs, and I usually cook them in some type of coconut oil, and then maybe 3 or 4 asparagus spears with that. Water is usually what I drink. Sometimes some of the flavored teas with a little bit of lemon in it. I've just acquired that taste over time. Again, that's kicking and clawing too, because I was a chronic Diet Coke addict, to be honest.
Got it.
Then I'll go about my day, and I'm usually not too hungry. Being keto adapted, the lower leptin levels, which you know about. So once you get through that keto adaptation phase, you usually don't get that hungry. Lunchtime, that could be all over the place. I do outside sales for a living, so it could be a small steak and like a salad. When a lot of times I'll ask for oil and pepper to put on the salad. Mm-hmm. Just for something on it and up my fat. And a lot of times if I'm on my own and it's on my dime, a lot of times I'll get stop at like a burger bar or something like that, and I'll get the burgers without the bun. Again, ask for the oil and dressing and stuff like that instead of fries. Maybe get a side salad. Again, not perfect paleo, organic and whatnot, but when you're on the road and in a pinch, sometimes that's the best way to go. Those Mongolian barbecues are great for that too, because you can drench the stuff in olive oil, like a small plate of meat and vegetables if you're a paleo guy.
Absolutely.
That's a great resource for when you're on the road.
Absolutely.
Believe it or not, sometimes those little Chinese buffets have a hibachi grill in the back where you can have someone make you a bowl of meat and vegetables right on the spot.
Absolutely.
Like I said, being on the road, I've found all the little ins and outs there. And then, there's a lot of breakfast places where you can get some eggs and bacon almost 20, all day long. But that's how I survive being on the road. And then when I get back home, it's pretty much the same thing. It's whatever I feel like eating. Sometimes I'll have baked salmon, and I'll pour olive oil over top of it. Always trying to keep my fat ratio higher for the ketogenic aspect.
Right.
Yeah.
And how long do you typically go between meals on average?
It really depends. Sometimes, some days I have to remind myself to eat. Usually it can be anywhere from 3 to 4 hours to sometimes 2. I don't know. It's all over the place. It's one of those I have a window to eat. And in the beginning, when I first went through this, like my first 12-week cycle, I tried with the old mentality of eating, at least 5 times a day. I think that comes programming from the old muscle and fiction world, where they had that meal cadence in there, 4 and 5, maybe even 6 times a day. But once you get keto adapted, you have higher blood level amino acids anyway. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that part is as necessary.
And is that higher blood level of amino acids just coming from the extra gluconeogenesis that's happening? Your body's trying to circulate those aminos and convert them to glucose for energy?
I would say so. I'd have to reread that physiology section in Finney's book, mm-hmm. To quote that exactly. But I remember that sticking out because that was a big question in my head being an athlete. They had us, remember coming from that powerlifting bodybuilding world, they wanted you to eat, a gram and a half to 2 grams of protein per body weight. So, I had friends that were 200 pounds trying to choke down 400 grams of protein a day.
Wow.
On a low carb, low fat, and it was a full-time job trying to get that much protein in them.
And it's interesting because, you look at the standard American diet, but if you look at any bodybuilder, right, any bodybuilder will tell you, and this is, back in the days of Arnold in the 70s, that you gotta keep the carbs down if you really want to lose weight. And it's amazing how the bodybuilders have had it right for so long. Can you kind of talk about that kind of bodybuilding power background, and then how they've always had it right, but we as the American people kind of had it backwards?
Yeah, it's I think it really has to do with follow the money kind of thing. Our food pyramid was at 6 to 11 servings of grains a day. At the bottom of the food pyramid, and when you tried to plug that into the formula where you go see your doctor, you're a little overweight, he says, I need you to lose some weight, and then he's programmed by this food pyramid, so he's thinking, well, you have to move more and eat less, but you don't change that food pyramid at all. So now you're still getting a high carb diet that's your body is reacting by dumping insulin. Even though your calories are lower, dumping insulin, not letting your body utilize the fat stores. So this goes on for a little bit. You're trying to move more, working up an appetite. We've all heard that phrase before. And you cut calories, but you've also kept your insulin levels high because you have a high carb diet. Maybe you've switched from a bowl of Captain Crunch to oatmeal and not knowing that it's not any different. Keeping those insulin levels elevated, and all of a sudden your body has nothing to do but lower its metabolism because you're starving at a cellular level now. And I think that's just the bigger problem with it. Is that old programming and not looking at some of the biology behind this.
Absolutely. And I know that we were on the low carb cruise just 2 weeks ago, and you gave a really good talk on all these aspects, and you talked about the keto and the paleo, and you talked about some of these things. Is there one aspect of your talk, because you lectured for over an hour when we shared the stage, is there one aspect of that talk that you want to share with the listeners right now that kind of was like really important that maybe we haven't touched upon yet?
I run in this gym, I see it's a little different than some of the people in clinical areas. I get to see my clients or patients or whatever you want to say in 4 and 5 times a week, and I think helping them with the day-to-day battle is the hardest part. And that story I told about how, Jamie, what do I do when I get that social pressure? People love in this country to see, as much as I hate to say it, they love to tune in and see failure. American Idol, they like to tune in week after week and see who fails. So when you go into that break room at work and it's someone's birthday again, Okay. And you start feeling those social pressures of, come on, you can do this, or just a little piece won't hurt you. You know, my most popular phrase that I tell all my clients is, I said, tell them, look, I have some goals right now, and those goals don't involve fill in the blank. You know, it's usually cake and ice cream, let's say, and it's usually 99-cent ice cream from the grocery store and some cheap cake. You say, I have some goals right now, and those goals don't involve that cheap ice cream and that cheap cake. I'll have it again. I've had it before. I just have these goals right now, and I have to get there for my health.
Yeah, I think it's really easy for people to lose sight of the long-term goal for the short-term gratification. I think we're really in a culture, just, we need that short-term gratification, and it can be tough. And it's always easier if the person's going to eat the cupcake or the cake next to you. It's always easier to kind of have you come along for the ride because it kind of justifies it, right?
Yeah, it's tough out there. It's a tough battle. Day to day, I see them for an hour in the gym. That's cool. I can give everyone a great workout. That 23 hours outside of there is the bigger battle.
So you would say environment is very strong. And I know I touched upon this. Environment is stronger than willpower. You need a really good environment, and we can control our home. Mm-hmm. We can control, for the most part, the friends we hang out with, but a lot of times we may not be able to control the work environment as much.
Yeah, work environment or the shopping environment. Look at every cash register in this country has got candy and pop at it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've used too, because I get what you said, and I agree, it takes a strong person to say that. I think the easier way to say it is just say you have an allergy too. That's a really an easy thing, because then people just leave you alone. They're like, oh, well, it's not about him being better than me. He can't have it from a medical perspective. Yeah.
I've done that before. I've also told the waitress that I was diabetic. I need to know what's in this.
Yes, and I find going to a restaurant, though, that is the best, because no restaurant wants someone having an anaphylactic shock and choking in front of the restaurant. That's not good for business. So anytime you go to a restaurant, you don't say, I have a sensitivity to gluten, because that, even though it's true for 90% of people, it may sound pretentious to the waitstaff, and they may be like, oh, well, whatever. I always say, I have an allergy. I have a severe allergy, so please make sure there are no flours in the sauces and there are no glutens, and make sure the chef, switches whatever, mitts or flippers if they're cooking a steak, or tongs if they're flipping a steak, and really give it that extra attention. That's a good little tip that's worked for me in the past.
Perfect. I'll use that. Thanks, Justin.
Yeah. So is there anything else from that cruise, from your lecture on the cruise, that you wanted to touch upon? You mentioned so much.
Yeah, there is a lot of information on there. I think in a nutshell, we got it. I think we got it all covered.
So right now, if someone is like starting to go low carb, keto, they're improving the quality of their macronutrients, macros meaning protein, fats, and carbs. They're eating better steaks or better organic veggies, or having better quality fats, coconut oil, beef tallow, etc. What are some movements that people can start incorporating into their workouts? Because I know you do own a CrossFit gym, so what would you recommend as a starting point to kind of get into the keto, but also get into the CrossFit style of movements?
Well, that's always, there's a lot of online resources. There's a lot of good CrossFit gyms out there. Do your research, ask around. Some of the movements I like. Being a power lifter, I love, full back squats, stuff like that. If I was new to them, I would just, it depends at what level of fitness you're at. It can just be as simple as air squats to get some blood moving through those bigger, deeper muscles. You can do simple stuff at home. They can be air squats, push-ups, and burpees right at home. If you have the means, look around, find a good CrossFit gym, or find a good trainer. It's one of those things you got to ask around. It's a word of mouth kind of thing. It's like going, different gyms have better quality coaches in them too. It's like going to the barbershop and asking. The barbershop itself isn't good, but the barbers themselves are. You got to do a little work.
Very good. And my main beef with a lot of CrossFit gyms is the on-ramps, or the foundation programs, are kind of differ from gym to gym. Some CrossFits don't even have like a foundation or an elements or kind of a ramp up. Each gym calls it different. What's your take on the ramp up type of program, and what do you have at your gym?
We we have a ramp up or a foundations class, we call it too, and that we don't have set in stone. It's always depending on the athletic ability of the individual. Sometimes I'll have a foundations class where we can knock it out pretty quick. So, I mean, say I have a high school athlete that comes in and has a lot of athletic ability and catches on real quick. But if I have a member who comes in and then they just need some extra work and a lot of extra help, we'll go 4 to 6 foundations classes till they feel real comfortable, and I'm comfortable they're not going to get hurt.
Got it. And where do you think the biggest mistakes happen at CrossFit gyms where people get hurt? How does that happen?
Well, trying to win, it's done in a little bit of a competitive environment, and people will forego their form to get to beat the guy next to them. But in that same token, though, I think that's on the coach. What you're paying for is group personal training, and in our CrossFit gym, we're constantly walking around that group, scanning that group, and we'll stop someone workout. Look, you got to stop. You're bending your back over. We got to straighten you back up. This is just a workout. There's no money involved here. We got to clean up your form because hurt is going to be no good. And we limit our class sizes too. If it's too much for one person to keep an eye on, we cap the class.
That makes sense. So really making sure there are quality in your reps and really making sure you're keeping the form dialed in so you don't get hurt first off.
Yeah, fortunately for me, it's I have a day job. It's not about the money. I'm not trying to jam everyone in my classes. I'm trying to provide a good environment and keep everyone happy and healthy.
That's great, Jamie. So I'm going to end the call here with 2 questions that I ask all my listeners. If you were stuck on a desert island, Jamie, what herb or supplement would you want with you?
Oh, man. What herb or supplement would I want with me? Boy, I don't know. I would probably resort to not an herb or a supplement, but would want some type of fat.
There you go. So, what would you choose? Coconut oil or bacon fat? What kind of fat?
Probably an animal source fat, a nice clean animal source fat, and bacon fat would be right up there.
Oh wow. Okay, so the only person that's answered bacon fat. I love it. Okay, that's cool.
Or pemmican, can you get someone to whip me up some pemmican?
Yeah, absolutely. And what 3 suggestions would you give to your clients or anyone asking just to kick more butt?
Do what you have to stay motivated. Some people like to watch YouTube videos in front of going to a workout. Some people like to get their pump up tunes on. It can be a constant battle. So look for things that motivate you. Maybe bring a partner or a friend. Those things right there will help really keep you motivated.
All right, so you gave me 1 there. You got to give me 2 more now.
Well, I can't tell you. That's one of my big ones. I'm sorry, Justin.
Okay, all right, that's fine. All right, so we got 1 big one there. Okay, got it. And Jamie, your website's paleoforpower.com.
Yep, and look for soon. I'm working on keto-paleo.com. I'm trying to pool all my resources together, keto-paleo. It should be out here pretty soon.
That's great. And is there any other resources that our listeners can come to find you at?
No, paleoforpower.com. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
And if they're in the Michigan area, the Howell, Michigan area, I think that's between Ann Arbor and Lansing. Is that correct?
Well, Ann Arbor, Lansing. That's be a good 2 miles or 2 big points. Yeah.
Got it. So if you're out in that Michigan area, feel free and reach out to Jamie at paleoforpower.com, and he'll be a good resource for you. Jamie, it was so great having you on the show. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much, Justin.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to beyondwellnessradio.com/question. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.